That day, when my brother-in-law saw me bathing, I was very embarrassed and turned my face away and quickly took a bath and came out. I forgot my private clothes in the bathroom. I went to the bathroom to get clothes. What I saw in front of me was my mouth open because my brother-in-law was holding my private clothes in his hand and smelling them. Then, as soon as I saw them, he took off my skin-colored cotton shirt. I used to come and go to the office alone, but sometimes when I got late, I had to come and go with Mohsen, which I was quite unhappy with. The only reason for this was Mohsen, who was my brother-in-law in the relationship, but had a dirty look. He had a dirty look on girls and that was his nature. I didn't talk to him the whole way and after reaching the office, I reached my cabin and started taking my name. I used to work in my brother-in-law Mohsen's office, but I found one of his habits very bad. That he was a nosy person and considered it his duty to scold every girl who came and went, but he was very rich. I had come to meet my sister, but because it was getting late, my sister stopped me at night and told me to leave for the office in the morning, which is why I had to come to the office with Mohsen today. I was sitting in my cabin checking my file when suddenly a girl knocked on the door and entered. I was shocked to see her coming into my cabin because her department was different. "Will you do one of my tasks?" she asked in a pleading manner. "Say yes." I asked in confusion that she had never come to me with any of her tasks like this before. "I want Sir Mohsen's signature on this, if you can get it done," she said in a pleading tone, and I understood the whole background of her plea and request. She was definitely afraid to go in front of Mohsen because Mohsen kept a dirty eye on every girl in the office, due to which every girl was afraid and scared to go in front of him. She couldn't even leave her job here because it was her job and the job wasn't so easy to get. She would have left this company and taken a job somewhere else. I felt sorry for her as well as everyone else. "Bring the file." Saying this, I took the file from him and then moved towards Mohsen's office. After taking permission, I entered and saw that he was leaning over a file and reading it. Without any introduction, I placed the file in front of him and asked him to sign it. He looked at me carefully and signed the file without reading it, so I felt disgusted by his eyes fixed on me and quickly picked up the file and left. I felt a bit angry at Mohsen and the reason was the dirty eyes he kept on every girl. Mohsen was my brother-in-law. My elder sister's husband was very rich, but along with being rich, he was also quite a luxurious and indulgent person. My sister and his marriage was purely an arranged marriage, which was done with the consent of both families. While Mohsen was extremely handsome and good-looking, my sister was no less beautiful. Onlookers used to call them the pair of the moon and the sun, and they were not wrong in saying this. Our financial status was lower than Mohsen's. We were not rich like him, but still Mohsen had accepted my sister as his wife, which we considered his superior status before their marriage. Mohsen had only 2 sisters in his house who got him married to my sister. They were both married and had children, and they rarely visited Mohsen's house. Their parents had died a long time ago, after which they were the only 3 siblings left, and Mohsen was younger than his 2 sisters. We were 2 sisters and 2 brothers in our house. Our mother was alive when Baba passed away 8 years ago. My 2 brothers were older than me and my sisters and they had set up a general store. Both brothers were married and had children, due to which the household expenses were also quite high. Before my sister Neelam got married to Mohsen, I was teaching in a school. I studied finance. 2 years after Mohsen and Neelam got married, I started doing every job in Mohsen's office as per her request so that I could contribute to the household expenses. Mohsen treated us all very well. In the first 2 years of our marriage, Neelam was also very happy, but then gradually she started being unhappy. There was only a gap of 1 year between Neelam and I, which is why I never bothered about you, sir, or your aunt, nor did she ever complain about this, and Mohsen was also the same age as Neelam, which is why I used to call her by her name. Neelam did not tell anyone the reason for her sadness, or maybe she did not want to tell anyone, but one day I forced her to ask, to which she told me that Mohsen is a person who loves beauty and has a dirty eye. He is a watcher and keeps an eye on other girls, and not only that, but he does not hesitate to hit Neelam even for the slightest thing. Hearing the whole truth from Neelam's mouth, I was left breathless and wanted to immediately tell my mother, but Neelam stopped me from telling anyone because my mother would get worried again and her health would deteriorate due to worry. Besides, she has a son now. She does not want this matter to be revealed to the family and they will separate him from Mohsen. If this happens, her son will lose his father and she also did not want her son to live without a father and there would be a gap in his life due to the absence of a father. Mohsen's sisters knew everything, but every time my sister Neelam used to advise me to be patient, saying that with time everything will be fine and that Mohsen will also give up all evil and that she is his wife, so just take care of her. I had married her so that she would get well and improve, to which Neelam would remain silent. I don't know why people think that if they get their spoiled son or brother married, they will improve. A person who has not taken care of his mother and sisters and has not taken care of himself, why would he bring a wife to improve? That spoiled person does not get well or improve after getting married, but he definitely spoils the life of the next girl and the same was the case with Mohsen, who did not improve even after marriage, but was still a looker and beauty lover, who did not appreciate my beautiful and strong sister, but rather beat her up for every little thing. After Mohsen came out of the cabin, I came out of my thoughts and then got busy with work because thinking about this person was like pushing myself into depression. I reached my home in the evening. This was 2 days later. One night, I was sitting looking at some office file when suddenly the phone rang. I quickly picked up the phone and on the other side was Neelam who was very upset and was asking me to come to her house. I got a little worried that why was she crying at this time of the night. Maybe Mohsen did something to her. Shaking off the wrong thoughts, I asked her the reason for her crying, but she told me to come home and immediately hung up the phone. I was very worried. Strange whispers were coming in my heart that I don't know what happened that she was crying so much. My mother was unwell. If I had told her this, she would have become even more worried and worsened her condition. So I left the house without telling anyone and took a taxi to Neelam's house. But when I went to her house, I was worried to see that my brother-in-law Mohsen was lying unconscious and Neelam was standing nearby crying. I asked her what had happened to him. She cried and expressed her ignorance, which made me very worried. Then, along with her and the driver, we took Mohsen to the hospital. He was quickly taken to the emergency room where his treatment was started. Neelam and I were very worried and I felt like this problem was serious. Nothing like this had happened before today. I was trying to comfort Neelam while crying that everything would be fine when the door opened and a doctor came out. Neelam quickly rushed towards her while I stood there looking at her worriedly. The doctor, looking at me with a piercing gaze, whispered something in my sister's ear, to which my sister came walking towards me angrily and then slapped Mirage on the cheek with a strong slap, to which I was like, why did he do this and what did the doctor say about me that made him do this? I looked at him with a red face, and he grabbed the file from the doctor and gave it to me. As soon as I opened the file and read it, my heart started beating fast and my face started to turn red because it was written in this file that I had been visiting the gynecologist for 3 days with my brother-in-law Mohsen and according to the report, I was going to become a mother and Mohsen's name was written in the father's box. I shook my head in denial and looked at my sister Neelam and said that this is a lie. I have no relation to Mohsen and I have not come here. I explained myself while crying but my sister slapped me on the face in anger and said that aren't you ashamed of having such a relationship with your own brother-in-law? She didn't want to understand anything, that is, she believed the doctor's words and this file and believed me wrong. How did this file come to you? How do you know all this? Suddenly shocked, I asked the doctor who showed that file to my sister Neelam. Mr. Mohsen had been coming to me for checkups with you for a few days. How could you forget me? Mr. Mohsen had told me that you were not happy with this child and wanted to waste it, but Mohsen didn't want that. He had also told me that you could kill him too and look, today you have poisoned him. The doctor said, so where are you, Miradamig? Neelam sat on the ground and started crying. Saying this, the doctor left with the file while I tried to explain to Neelam that there was nothing like this, the doctor was lying. I have nothing to do with Mohsen, nor have I poisoned him. If you want, get me checked up. On my words, Neelam pushed me and said that now you will lie by getting checked up by the doctor you bought. I don't believe you, get out of here. I was stunned by Neelam's distrust, who didn't believe her own sister, That too when she knew everything about me. I started feeling sorry for her but I couldn't do anything. That's when I went home, but this thought definitely came to my mind that why did this doctor do all this? And who poisoned Mohsen? I felt that this was the work of some girl from the office. After all, he used to tease them a lot and every girl was helpless against it. Surely someone in the office must have poisoned her to take revenge on her. I had reached home thinking all this but did not tell anyone at home that Mohsen was in the hospital, otherwise other things would have come to light and then like Neelam my brothers and sisters and mother would have thought I was wrong. I had fallen into a deep sleep thinking about the solution to this problem. My innocence could be proven only after Mohsen regained consciousness. The next day I woke up in the morning and instead of going to the office, I had reached the hospital to see if Mohsen had regained consciousness. Neelam was not in the hospital but had gone home where her son was alone. I went straight to Mohsen's cabin but he was unconscious. From there I reached the office and checked everything. I asked Mohsen's secretary what he had eaten yesterday and who had given him everything that the secretary had named after him because it was the secretary's responsibility to give Mohsen lunch, tea, coffee and everything. I asked the secretary all sorts of questions, which proved that the secretary had not poisoned him, which made me worried about who had poisoned him, but then I was shocked that maybe no one had poisoned him and he was pretending to be sick to trap me and to win over Neelam. As soon as this thought came to my mind, I went back to the hospital where I found that Mohsen had regained consciousness and Neelam had gone to the canteen with her son, whom she had brought to the hospital. When I entered Mohsen's cabin, he was lying on the hospital bed with a yellow face. It looked as if all the blood had been squeezed out of his body. At one moment I felt sorry for him because he really looked sick with a cannula on one arm, but the next moment when I remembered the baseless accusations that the doctor had made about Mohsen, my pity was overtaken by hatred and anger and I stretched my body and went in front of him and started staring at him with hatred. "Why are you looking at me like this?" he asked in a condescending tone, which made me even more angry. How calm he was by accusing me. "What nonsense is that doctor talking about you and me? I have always considered you my brother and sister-in-law, but you have turned this relationship into a joke. You have made me lose my sister's eyes by making me talk so meanly about myself and me. What did I do wrong to you that you took such a mean revenge on me?" I asked him because I was not able to control myself. He kept looking at me for a while, but then his facial expressions suddenly became serious, as if he had remembered everything about what I was talking about. He remained silent for a while, but my anger grew even more. "I did all this so that I could take revenge on you for the insult you had done to me in front of everyone in the office," Mohsen said in a low tone, and I suddenly remembered that evening a month ago. That evening, I was about to leave for home, as I had to hurry home, when suddenly I caught sight of Mohsen, who was standing with his secretary, with one hand on the girl's shoulder and the other caressing her cheek. There were many people in the office, whom Mohsen did not care about. I, fuming with anger, went to his head and started questioning him about his behavior, to which everyone started gathering, but I kept insulting him, saying that he was a dirty-looking man who did not care about his wife and child and was slapping his face outside. Mohsen tried hard to stop me, but I vented all my anger on him and his secretary, while everyone standing around was smiling sarcastically and watching the spectacle. Mohsen's face turned red with insult, but I did not remain silent, but after insulting him immensely, I even called him a man who did not care about the honor of a woman. That day, he listened to everything. His secretary left the job and he hired a new secretary who was a good girl. Even after that, Mohsen had the same attitude but he didn't say anything to me that day, which surprised me, but a month later he took revenge on my character for the fact that I had fallen in the eyes of my sister. "That is, you asked this doctor to tell such a dirty lie by adding Mira Nam's name to your name to take revenge for your disrespect to me?" I asked incredulously, and Mohsen confessed that he had asked this doctor to do all this by giving him 2 lakh rupees just to take revenge so that I would get a bad name, that too with the name of the same person whom I despise. And to take revenge on me, he also made a false statement about falling ill and dying by consuming poison. "How can you be so mean?" I said in surprise. Then Mohsen quickly shook his head in the negative and said that this is not a drama, but he has been poisoned in the middle and he narrowly escaped death. He had told this lady doctor that he would play the role of being poisoned and then that doctor should give that file to Neelam, that is, my sister, which would make Neelam hate me, and he was successful in his attempt, but someone had poisoned him in the middle. But the question was who poisoned him. His secretary was Sharif, who had no enmity with Mohsin. Then who poisoned you? I asked thoughtfully. Regardless of what he did to me, I was worried about his life because I did not want my sister to become a widow in her prime and her child an orphan. This was all I was thinking, and the more I thought, the more confused I became. There were signs of sadness on Mohsin's face, the reason for which I could not understand, although I also knew that all this was not because of my bad deeds, or maybe he was feeling like this because of his illness. Yes, maybe not, of course it was, otherwise why would he be sad about this game he played with me? I was just immersed in my thoughts when suddenly I was startled by a familiar voice coming from behind me. That voice was none other than my sister Neelam. I turned around in surprise and saw her, who was crying with tears on her cheeks and looking at me. Her son was sleeping on her shoulder. Mohsin also looked at her in surprise. What do you mean? I asked in surprise. What does it mean that I had poisoned Mohsin because I wanted to kill him? She stood in front of me while crying. While knowing this truth, I was stunned and could not even move from my place, and Mohsin was also silent like me, that he did not expect this from his wife Neelam, who was so self-absorbed. What are you saying and why? I started asking in shock. Forgive me, I doubted you, Mafia. What the doctor said about you and Mohsin, I believed his words and his lies without thinking. Forgive me. After seeing all that, my brain had stopped working and I misunderstood you without thinking, even knowing how big of a liar and a big liar this person is. Neelam apologized to me and finally looked at Mohsin with hatred and said, then Mohsin bowed his head as if he regretted that he should not have done what he did to me. I saw Neelam, who was crying uncontrollably. Why did you poison Mohsin, Neelam? I asked the question that was nagging at my mind. He was not a good person. In the early days of Mafia rule, he treated me like a princess, but gradually his heart was filled with me. He started having affairs with non-girls. He would scold non-girls with boldness and I could not do anything. If I had stopped him, he would have wronged me. He would have beaten me and made me weak. I could not have asked him to answer. If I had told my mother and brothers, I don't know what would have happened. I didn't want a divorce, thinking that one day it would improve, but it didn't, and then my son was born. I didn't want to raise my son without a father, so I tolerated every injustice of this person and left him to his fate, thinking that he wouldn't improve either. But the next day I heard him talking on the phone. He was talking about a gynecologist, which meant that he was in a relationship with a girl who needed a gynecologist. My tolerance had reached its limit. He was celebrating this happiness by ruining my life. If I got divorced, it would have a bad effect on my son, and I didn't want any kind of gap in my son's life. That's when I thought of killing him. If I had been divorced, people would have taunted me and made my life forbidden. It was better that I became a widow, not taunted by people, but rather got sympathy. That's when I mixed poison in his tea and gave it to him, saying that I couldn't bear this person's cruelty anymore, without thinking about what would happen to him. But then when the doctor said all that about you and Mohsin, I felt it was true, and he was talking to the gynecologist about you. Seeing all this, I got angry and you doubted me. Forgive me, please. Neelam told me the whole story while crying and asked for forgiveness, so I forgave her and hugged her, to which she breathed a sigh of relief. And you? I don't want to live with you because I am afraid of what you will say to me. I don't care about any girl you keep an eye on now, and don't even think that I will forgive you for what you tried to do to my sister. Come on, Mafia. Neelam turned to Mohsin and said in an angry tone, and then returned home with me. Mohsin came home after recovering. Everyone in the house had been told everything except that Mohsin tried to defame me, and everyone was with Neelam that whatever she wanted would happen now. She had brought her son with her. After 3 days, Mohsin started visiting our house. He would apologize, promise not to do that in the future, and ask to take Neelam with him, but Neelam neither said yes nor changed her mind, on which Mohsin became angry and stopped coming to our house. Neelam thought that he would divorce her now, but he did not come to our house for a month, nor did any of us hear from him. I had left his office job,